The problem here is, did Prince Harry get special discretion? My name is Michael Cole. I'm a royal writer and commentator, former BBC court correspondent, court as in Buckingham Palace rather than the High Court in the Strand. Of course, Americans take very, very seriously the matter of immigration, particularly when people are applying for visas to stay in the country and work in the country. And this right-wing think tank called the Heritage Foundation has been campaigning for months now to get full access to the visa documents which Prince Harry submitted when he left this country, went initially with his wife to Canada, and then went down to California, which may have been her intended destination all along. And those forms, if anybody's ever been to America, are quite exhaustive, and they want to know quite a lot about you before they allow you to come in. It's taken very, very seriously indeed, with more accent upon that these days, now perhaps that President Trump is there. Anyway, Prince Harry completed the forms and he was given permission to stay. And this think tank wants to know how he answered particularly the yes or no tickable question: have you ever used drugs and have you ever been convicted of using drugs? Now, in his book, autobiography, ghostwritten with an American journalist, J.R. Mehring, called Spare, Prince Harry admits to using drugs. He said he used cannabis, weed. The book is littered with references to weed, and he used cocaine, which he didn't much like and didn't find effective. As far as he was concerned, it didn't make him happy. And also magic mushrooms, whatever they are, but he used them. Now, of course, normally an admission like that would have barred anybody from being admitted to the United States. Immigration officers do have discretion in this, and there have been some high-profile cases where people have had drug convictions, but nevertheless have been allowed to go into the United States and live there and work there and function there. The problem here is, did Prince Harry get special discretion? These documents actually don't really tell you a great deal. There's 80 pages of them, but they're so heavily redacted, blacked out, that it's difficult to make any real sense of them. The Heritage Foundation said they're frustrated by this, but that's not the end of the road, and they're going to be pushing more and more to try and find out what exactly he said. Now, it would all come down to perhaps the discretion of the President of the United States, President Trump. And he has said on the record that he will leave him, that's been Prince Harry, I'll leave him alone. He's got enough problems with his wife. She's terrible. So that's what President Trump said about Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex, to give her a full title. She, of course, is no great fan of Trump. When he was coming to Britain, she made herself obvious by her absence from any events that were concerning him. So that is the position we're in with Prince Harry. We still don't know what he wrote and how he answered the immigration form. And it's a little bit of a stalemate situation. They don't want, Heritage Foundation don't want people of status and wealth using their status and wealth to get access to their country, the country which they love and are very, very patriotic about. It's a simple question, really, I suppose, from their point of view. They can speak for themselves, of principle. Has he had a special favor? What are the terms on which the favor was granted? And can he be deported? And then there would be a question of where would he be deported? Back to Canada, from whence he came, or back to this country? Would he welcome that? Would the British people welcome that? These are all imponderable questions which depend upon a full disclosure. But the Department of Homeland Security has said that the head of information there, Chief Information Officer, he said it would be potentially expose the individual, Prince Harry, to harm from the media or others if these documents were disclosed. And that is their reason for redacting, blanking out large parts of these documents.
Do you think it's appropriate for us to know about past drug use of royal family figures?
I, I do. If somebody's a public figure in that sense, I think there is a legitimate public interest in knowing that, particularly if it pertains to something like residency status. This is a matter from America initially, but I think people are entitled to know something of that nature. I mean, it would be strange if they were not.
You mentioned there as well that President Trump is involved here, really. Rumors that he could deport Harry if he really wanted to. I mean, do you think that's realistic, or is he sort of very keen to keep royal relations? Obviously, we know that Trump likes the royal family.
Certainly, Donald Trump was a great fan of late Her Majesty the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II. His mother was a big fan. His mother came from the Isle of Lewis, up near Stornoway, she lived, and went to America and married a man of German extraction, Trump's father. And she was a big fan of the Queen, the late Queen, and so was President Trump. And of course, he has big interests in Scotland, I think 2 golf courses at least. And hitherto, he's always wanted to maintain good relationships with this country and with the royal family. A state visit is in the offing. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, one of the first things he did after the president was installed was to extend the invitation to another state visit. Quite a rarity because he's already had one state visit during his first 4-year term as president. So there are other factors at play. The president, the Donald, sees himself as a deal maker. I imagine how he sees the deal sizing up, or that will determine his attitude on matters of this kind.
Do you think the king finds himself in something of an awkward position at the moment? Because obviously President Trump has been making all sorts of threats to Canada, but the king is head of Canada, of course, as head of the Commonwealth. But he's also expected to receive Trump on a state visit. I mean, what do you think the mood is there?
Well, of course, the king at all times acts upon the advice of the prime minister, and that extends not just the prime minister of this country. If he's in Canada and it pertains to Canada, it's the prime minister of Canada. That's how a constitutional monarchy works. You mentioned Canada, a special case, and of course the new prime minister there, Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England. I listened in full to his speech when he took over as leader of the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative Party in Canada, Liberal Party, and then became Prime Minister. And he made a formidable speech. He was never been an elected politician, but it was a great speech. And I think President Trump has got a fight on his hands if he's up against Mark Carney, who is a very formidable and very clever and astute man, and I think will be a great Prime Minister of Canada because, as he made very, very, very clear, Canada was not going to be stepped upon and disadvantaged by its big neighbor to the south. It's difficult sleeping next to a giant. Giant rolls over, you get hurt. But Canada, of course, is a vast country. I think it's the second largest country in the world to Russia. And the things that have kept Canada together over the years historically were the Canadian National Railway, which spanned the country, and also the monarchy. And the late Queen, although she never went to school, she had tutors and she spoke very good French. And she was very astute in her handling of Francophone Canada, Quebec, and made sure that there were visits there and so on. Her mother, the late Queen Mother, she said when she was very young, she gave her heart to Canada. And the royal family have always been heavily committed to Canada. They didn't go there during the war. They didn't go into exile when the Nazi threat of invasion was apparent. They stayed there. The Queen said famously, the girls, Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret, cannot go without me. I cannot leave the king will not leave. So they stayed at Windsor throughout the war. But Canada was one option there. So Canada is very important to this country, and quite rightly so. I have a huge respect for the Canadians, and I have a huge respect for their place in the Commonwealth and the way they've always been very loyal to this country. And I think we've been loyal to them, and that's quite rightly so. So it is potentially a problem, but things can change very quickly in Trumposphere. One never knows what we're going to get from day to day. And maybe it will all change. It seems to be changing on a daily basis. And what I do think is that, and Carney made that clear, that Canada was not susceptible to bullying or blackmailing by Trump. He just said they simply were not, and they were not going to be the 51st state, which was a rather insulting thing for President Trump to have said. Not that he cares what I think about it, but I think it was insulting to regard it in that way. But then he has other things. He has eyes on Greenland. I don't know how Denmark feels about that. That's a sovereign territory of Denmark. We will see, will we not? But things will change. I'm sure it will be a bit tricky when the king meets President Trump, but I'm quite sure his advisors will be there, and it will all be handled in the best possible way.
Do you think Canada would receive Prince Harry and Meghan Markle?
Well, she lived in Toronto for, I think, at least 7 years when she was making the television series, legal series called Suits. It was set in New York, but it was all shot in Toronto, as they call it, Toronto, which you can see from time to time. The buses are different and so on and so forth in the street shots. So she lived there. I'm sure she liked it. She had a successful time there. It would be very, I mean, the thing about Canada, it's a very reasonable, decent, down-to-earth place. And they don't do things peremptorily. They do things sensibly. They are very rational people, very good people, very stoic people, very strong people, very long traditions with this country. Many Scots went there, Irish went there. That's the bedrock of Canada. And what I think about very strongly is what happened when the 51, I think, or 52 American hostages were taken in Tehran from the embassy and were held hostage during the administration of Jimmy Carter. The Canadian embassy hid, I think it was 8 or 9 of them, throughout that time. And when it was all over and when everybody was released and everybody could acknowledge what had gone on, I remember the Americans holding up saying, "Thank you, Canada. Merci, Canada." These are ties that bind. That border between the two countries was always said to be the longest unprotected, militarily unprotected border in the world. I mean, after the American Revolution, for many years, there were forts along the border. But subsequent to that, relationships were always extremely good between the two countries. America's economy 10 times as big as Canada's. But Canada has very many important strategic qualities to it. What it can do, its raw materials, and so on, not just oil, but aluminium and other important matters. And of course, defensively, strategically, hugely important, stretching up way into the Arctic Circle. Uninhabited lands, many of them, apart from Inuits and other people like that, but highly important place. And I think Donald Trump, as the great deal maker, will realize that he's got more to gain, more to benefit by being friendly towards Canada, because as far as I can see, Canada has always been friendly towards the United States. It doesn't want to be the United States, certainly doesn't want to be the 51st state. Canada's people are charming. They put a maple leaf on everything. They're very patriotic. They're very proud of what they do, and quite rightly so. I admire the place. I admire them. And I would say to President Trump, if he listened to me, hands off.